All right, let's do it. Going live here. Chuck Holton coming to you from my studio in Panama. You know, for the first time in this war, the United States is putting NATO on notice. And President Trump just issued a blunt warning to America's allies over the Strait of Hormuz crisis. And he said, basically, you guys get most of your energy from here. You need to help to safeguard the Strait of Hormuz so that we can get oil flowing again, so that we don't see another spike or even worse spike in the price of oil. And he's saying, look, you know, why should we shoulder this burden alone? So he's trying to form a coalition of the willing, and there's not a lot of people taking him up on it. So we're going to talk about that today on the Hot Zone. We're going to go through an update on the war. We're going to talk about what's happening in Lebanon and so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff going on for sure. The real question right now is how much Hormuz matters to all of this. And so we're going to get deeper into that. And we're going to try to ascertain whether or not NATO is going to get pulled into this. We've already had one NATO country, two NATO countries that were at least targeted by Iran, Cyprus and Turkey. Cyprus was struck. They're not talking about invoking Article 5 just yet, but President Trump is just trying to get people to, including China, for a surprising twist, getting them to come and help secure the Strait of Hormuz. And China's like, why should we do that? Our oil is still flowing through there. So we're going to talk about all of that today. Now, first of all, I want to give you a update from Admiral Brad Cooper on the war. He does very good updates. And if you want to just listen to this and be done, this is your good update on what's happening around the whole conflict zone. Take a listen.
The commander of U.S. Central Command, here to provide another update on Operation Epic Fury. For 16 days, we've delivered overwhelming firepower deep into Iran. This past Friday, U.S. forces executed a large-scale precision strike on Karg Island, destroying more than 90 Iranian military targets, including storage bunkers for naval mines and missiles and other military infrastructure. To date, our Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps aviators have collectively flown more than 6,000 combat flights, demonstrating the unmatched capability of America's joint force as we maintain air superiority over Iranian skies. We continue to remain centered on our military objectives. These are well-defined and include eliminating Iran's ballistic missiles, drones, and naval threats. It's one thing to defend by striking launchers and intercepting missiles and drones, but it's another thing to eliminate the wider manufacturing apparatus behind them. And we are doing that today. We've talked about it in concept. Here's what it looks like in reality. Let me show you, for the first time, a few examples of how we are dismantling Iran's defense industrial base, which will prevent threats to the region into the future. Here you see a photo from March 1st of a naval drone storage facility located near the Strait of Hormuz. This is the same location 8 days later, completely destroyed. Next, here's a photo taken of an attack drone production factory in Tehran on March 5th. Here's that same factory 6 days later after a devastating barrage of U.S. airstrikes. And finally, the Yazdi military depot, pictured here last month. These 8 buildings are part of the IRGC's missile command infrastructure and are used to produce light and heavyweight torpedoes. Now, here's that same military depot just last week, or what's left of it. U.S. and partner strikes are doing exactly what they are intended to do: deliver on very clear military objectives to eliminate Iran's ability to project power against Americans and against its neighbors. We're also zeroed in on dismantling Iran's decades-old threat to the free flow of commerce through the Strait of Hormuz. Through a combination of air, land, and maritime capabilities, we have successfully destroyed over 100 Iranian naval vessels, and we aren't done. We will continue to rapidly deplete Iran's ability to threaten freedom of navigation in and around the Strait of Hormuz. Our progress remains steady, and we remain vigilant against the enemy. Now, a few thoughts about Iran. Over the last 2 weeks, they have launched attacks on Oman, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jordan, Cyprus, Turkey, Azerbaijan, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Iraq, Kuwait, and Bahrain. In each of these countries, they are deliberately attacking innocent civilians. They've done this more than 300 times, which demonstrates their true nature as a global leader of terror. In just the last few days, the Iranian regime launched a reckless attack against civilian neighborhoods in Tel Aviv with cluster bombs, an inherently indiscriminate type of munition. We join countries across the region in condemning this aggression, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with our partners in bolstering our own defenses. In sum, I will reinforce what I've said before. Iran's capabilities are declining as our capabilities and advantages continue to build. And finally, I'd like to talk about the extraordinary 50,000 Americans who are deployed across the region executing this vital mission.
All right, so that is Admiral Brad Cooper giving you an update on the war. The thing I like about him is that he is very clear on the objectives. Like, this is what we are setting out to do. We're not just blowing things up to blow things up, but we are destroying the Iranians' ability to threaten the United States. And so we're doing that by employing maximum power and building power over time. I have a video of some missiles coming in and striking in Iran, and you can see 6 of them inside of 30 seconds come in and just, so take a look at these, and then we'll talk a little more about them. Look carefully, you can see them coming in from the sky. There's one. Okay, so obviously we are hitting what we aim at in Iran. Iran is also hitting what they aim at times. There was over the weekend where they put out word that anybody that was around a certain facility in the UAE needed to move away from there. It was a fuel depot. And then Iran struck that fuel depot. So even despite all the anti-air defenses that they have in the UAE, then they have employed to good effect over the course of this war. They've been hit with more than 1,700 rockets and drones and missiles. But that strike that they announced beforehand, told them they were going to do, got through. So actually, I think I have a video of that as well. They struck an oil or a fuel depot this is in Dubai, right near the airport, ended up shutting down the airport for 7 hours. So there you can see the fire burning. This is just outside Dubai airport. Yeah. So there's that. Iran has been severely degraded, but they have not been taken out completely by any stretch. And they still have the ability to cause damage and hurt people. And they are doing their best to try to do that. Now, as Admiral Cooper said, we've gotten rid of about 100 naval vessels from the Iranian Navy. Now, the Iranians, as you know, have maybe several hundred vessels total, but we've sunk the major ones. All their big ships are pretty much at the bottom at this point, except for one that surrendered to Sri Lanka or someplace, or no, was it Sri Lanka? I forget. Of course, the United States still has air dominance over the entire country of Iran. They're deploying B-2 bombers. I think that the video we watched of the missiles coming in were likely dropped from, it sounded like fighter aircraft, but those were likely JDAMs. They're dropping 2,000-pound penetrator bombs on deeply buried ballistic missile launchers. They are going beyond just striking existing military assets, and they're trying to, as Admiral Cooper said, raise or level, raise as in R-A-Z-E, right? As in cut it down to the ground, Iran's ballistic missile industrial base to keep it from rebuilding at some point in the future. So that's serious. I mean, they're doing the job. Between the United States and the Israelis, they've struck more than 7,000 targets now in, what are we on, day 14 of the war? So 500 targets a day on average. And it looks like they're planning for at least another 3 weeks of this. So if we just extrapolate that out, what's that, 21,000 targets that they'll probably strike if they keep up this pace. That's a lot. And Iran's a big country, but they are not going to have much of their, at least, state infrastructure left. So far, we've not been striking Iran's oil transport facilities, things like that. We've just been striking military and industrial base and the administrative base in Iran. Okay, so we've degraded their capabilities pretty seriously. We've been using these Lucas drones. It's a low-cost alternative for hitting Iranian targets. The first time it's been used in combat. And this is ironic because the Lucas drone is essentially a Shahed 136 drone that Iran invented. We reverse engineered it, rebuilt it, made it better, and now we're firing those back at Iran. So more than 50,000 troops from the United States are currently committed to the operation. And the IDF is requesting government approval to raise their authorized, what do they call it, the reserve ceiling from like 260,000 troops to 450,000 troops. This authorization would be one of the largest that Israel has seen in decades. And it would even surpass the scale of the 1973 war that they call the Yom Kippur War. The reason is because Israel is starting a large operation to push into Lebanon and to take over everything south of the Litani River. This is an area that is, let's see, it's about 3 times the size of New York City, with a lot less people, obviously. So it's about the size of a good-sized U.S. county. What are you doing, dear?
Getting salmon dip.
Oh, my wife's coming to get a snack. So that's okay. So now she got me thinking about salmon dip. Taking over the Litani area is doable, but they are going to need a lot of troops to do that. Like I said, it's about 3.5 times the size of Chicago or something like that. You know, it's a good sized area for sure. Okay, so they've already begun those operations inside Lebanon and they're ramping them up. It's obviously going to take them some time to muster all these new reservists that they're calling up. This takes a bite out of the economy in Israel, but the economy has been incredibly resilient throughout the war. You would have done well if you had invested in the Israeli economy at the beginning of the war. So I don't expect this to be much different. I think that Israel is in pretty good shape right now. They are operating in a very high tempo across Iran, and they still have troops in Syria, and they have troops in Lebanon, and they have troops in Gaza. But the real warfare that they're having to face, that they're struggling with in Israel, is the information war. because there are just, I mean, full court press by the, enemies of Israel, to include the press in the United States, full court press by bot farms that are run by Russia and Iran and North Korea and China, to try to turn public sentiment against this conflict. And they are in some ways being successful. There's been a really weird thing that's been going on with like Tucker Carlson and his ilk, the black pill right is what I like to call them. And they're claiming that Netanyahu, it might actually be dead, because they're saying he hasn't been seen in public in a long time. And there was a video he put out the other day that showed he had 6 fingers. And so it was obviously AI generated. Well, I went and found that picture, and I'll show it to you here. And you tell me if we can count 6 fingers on Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay. Now, this is a little weird, just the angle that it's shot at. But if I count each one of those fingers, I count 5. I count 4 fingers and a thumb. But somehow they're saying, no, this shows that he had 6 fingers. It's just the way he's holding his hand. And so they're making the claim that Netanyahu is actually, hiding, or he's deceased or something like that. So he was forced to come out and make a few videos of him walking around in public just to show that he's alive. And I translated one of them into English for you so you can hear what he had to say. Take a listen.
What exactly did you ask me?
You think people online are saying you're dead?
I'm absolutely crazy about coffee. You know what? I'm just crazy about my people, how fantastically they behave.
Would
do
you
you
be
want
able
to
to
count
show
a
us?
few fingers? Right here, right here. Did you see that?
Excellent.
Cheers.
What's the message for people who are going out and getting some fresh air? Go out for some fresh air, but near a safe zone. And your country is amazing, giving strength to me, the government, the IDF, the Mossad. We're doing things I can't share right now, but we are acting, striking Iran very hard, even today, and in Lebanon too. We are moving forward. You are telling me to keep going. I am telling all of you to keep going as well. You must continue to obey the Homefront Command's instructions at all times, and also adhere to the directives of the city mayors. Always be near a protected space. We will make things as easy as we possibly can. And thank you for the coffee. It's absolutely excellent. I don't know about the calories. That seems very dangerous to me.
Now, that video is translated by AI. I did it. I'm the one who translated it into English. And that's why his voice sounds a little stilted there, because he was actually speaking Hebrew. There are other videos that have been put out today of Netanyahu walking around outside and talking to people and everything like that. And I'll just say, if you really think that Netanyahu is putting out AI generated videos and that he is hiding or that he's dead, you're tuned into the wrong podcast. Okay. You would be better off going elsewhere. Go check out, guys like the InfoWars people, Alex Jones and people like that. If you want tinfoil hat stuff, you're not going to get that here. Here, I'm going to tell you the truth, and I'm as the best I can do to find the truth for you and to bring it to you unadulterated. So, Netanyahu is alive, and he is in charge, and Israel is doing well in this conflict. Now, the Iranians, as I said, are striking back. They've struck 13 countries around them. I have an image of all the strikes that you've seen around. This is it's kind of hard to see the map. The map's a little grayed out, but the red are strikes from Iran. The brown are strikes from Israel. The gray are strikes from the United States. And the kind of darker purple or whatever color that is Iranian proxies. So whether that's Hezbollah or the Hashishabi in Iraq. This is a regional war. I mean, you look at that right there, you can see it is definitely a regional war. There's no two ways about it. Now, in the Strait of Hormuz, we are actually seeing, this is going around on social media today, that there is ship traffic. Whoops, wrong one. There is ship traffic through there. At least one ship was tracked on radar going through the strait. If I can find that, here it is. This is a ship from Karachi. I don't know. It says Karachi on it, so that would be Pakistani ship going through the Strait of Hormuz, and was not struck. But that doesn't mean that the strait is open. I mean, it doesn't take much, as President Trump has said, for the strait to be closed. All it takes is some guys with a speedboat and a couple of mines, or somebody with a drone to threaten shipping, and the insurance companies are just not going to insure ships to go through there. So there's still, right now, they're down at least 12 million barrels a day coming through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, President Trump has been pressuring the NATO allies and others, including Japan and China, to come to the Strait of Hormuz with their militaries and help to secure it for everybody to come through. As I said, China is like, well, why would we do that? We already are getting our oil because Iran is allowing our oil to get through the Strait of Hormuz, so we don't need to send our troops there for any reason. Japan gets more than 80% of its oil from the Strait of Hormuz, so you would think they would want to send troops. The only problem they have is that their constitution forbids it. You'd have to change their constitution. And I know sometimes it's hard for Americans to understand. Like, it makes total sense that Japan ought to be sending ships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz if they get 80% of their energy from there. Why aren't they doing it? Well, it's against their constitution. Well, why don't they do it anyway? Would you say that about the American Constitution? I don't think that it's right for us to expect countries to just, ignore their own constitutions, even if it's inconvenient for us. So China's like, well, we'd like to help, but we really can't. Australia gets a large portion of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and they've said flat out they're not going to send anybody to help, but they're not a NATO ally. And if anybody should be sending help, it should be Australia for sure. But they have a very liberal government that doesn't like President Trump, and they're not going to help President Trump in this. But all of the NATO, our actual NATO allies, are saying the same thing. They're saying, we're not going to send troops. We don't want to be involved in this war, et cetera, et cetera. So the Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, said that they're in discussions with the United States to come up with a multinational plan to reopen the waterway. But he kind of made it clear that, we will do that as soon as it's safe to do so, which means the United States is going to have to secure the waterway on our own because these guys are just not going to get involved. President Trump complained about that on Air Force One. This is what he had to say.
Some of the countries would be, help. Remember, it only takes a couple of people to screw up the strait, a couple of terrorists. You don't need their military is defeated, but all you need is a few people dropping mines here or there, and you loosen up. So we need. I'm demanding that these countries come in and protect their own territory because it is their territory. It's a place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us protect it. You could make the case that maybe we shouldn't be there at all because we don't need it. We have a lot of oil. We are the #1 producer anywhere in the world times new.
Okay, so you're saying we shouldn't be there at all because we don't get any oil to speak of through the Strait of Hormuz, less than 1% of our oil. Europe, NATO countries by and large, don't get a ton of their energy through the Strait of Hormuz. I think the average across European countries is less than 6% of their total energy. So they're all saying, well, we're not going to send troops. And President Trump's saying, well, why should we do it? I think the answer to that is because, well, you started the war. I mean, there's that. There's the fact that the war was started by the United States and Israel, and it was started with a very just cause. I'm not saying that they were wrong in starting the war, but it is a little rich for President Trump to say, well, hey, we don't really need this oil, so we might as well just pull out. Everybody knows that is not true, because President Trump is desperate to open the Strait of Hormuz before oil gets to $200 a barrel. $200 a barrel, as I've said before, would cause a global financial meltdown. $150 a barrel would cause a global downturn in the economy for sure. It's already doubled or tripled plane fares around the world. It's already, causing the price of food to go up. And you say, well, wait a minute, they're not transporting food through the Strait of Hormuz. Then why is the price of food going up? Well, because not only does the fuel that it takes to deliver your food go through the Strait of Hormuz in some cases, but the natural gas that they use for fertilizer. You may know that nitrogen fertilizer is usually made from natural gas. And so a lot of that natural gas fertilizer goes through the Strait of Hormuz and just can't do so right now. So that's already causing a spike in the price of vegetables and things like that. So there's again, the media is trying to portray this as, President Trump was completely unprepared for the Strait of Hormuz to get shut down. That's not true. They had things in writing from the Trump administration right after he took office this time. So that's definitely not the case. But he is desperate to get that strait back reopened. And so he's sending out his minions to go on TV and talk about it. Here's Carolyn Levitt talking about why it's important for NATO allies and other countries to help us with the Strait of Hormuz.
Trump says that other countries should now step up to safeguard ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Why should other countries that weren't consulted about this war, that aren't involved in this war, now put their troops in harm's way in the Strait of Hormuz?
Because these other countries are benefiting greatly from the United States military taking out the threat of Iran. The rogue Iranian regime has long not just posed a threat to the United States of America, but of course to our Gulf and Arab partners in the region. As you see, I believe Iran has struck more than 300 civilian targets in the Gulf region. If you think about Europe, their ballistic missile capability that the United States military is currently wiping out was a direct and imminent threat to our European allies as well as our bases in the region, which is why President Trump took this action in the first place. So these countries are absolutely benefiting from ensuring that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. This is something not just the United States, but the entire Western world has agreed with for many, many years. So I think the president is absolutely right to call on these countries to do more to help the United States to reopen the Strait of Hormuz so that we can stop this terrorist regime from restricting the free flow of energy. And the fact that they are doing so just underscores why President Trump needed to take this action in the first place.
Okay, so that is Carolyn Levitt making very good points there. And she's completely right about that. The United States is making the world a safer place by taking the regime out of Iran. This is something that the entire Western world has agreed on for many years, for a long time, that needed to be done. And that Iran was a threat to us and to the rest of the world. So yeah, it would be a nice thing if some of these countries would step up and send a little help to try to get this open. Now, when it comes to NATO, I see some people asking, like, do we even need NATO anymore? Well, yes, we absolutely do need NATO. But when it comes to NATO, President Trump has been quite unfriendly to our NATO allies since he took office. He's sent the vice president over to Europe to lecture them about their internal politics, which, are things that in America conservatives don't agree with, like their gay rights or, all that kind of stuff. But that's not really appropriate for an American president to go over there and to be invited to speak to a group of NATO allies and then to go out there and just hammer them mercilessly. Of course, that whole issue with Greenland really caused some friction between the United States and NATO, even to the point where NATO countries were sending troops to Greenland, and, essentially daring President Trump to invade Greenland. Not that they were going to fight against American troops there, but just be there as sort of a deterrent. President Trump, of course, did not end up taking Greenland because we never needed to take Greenland. There was no reason to make those claims, and it didn't help our case at all. It didn't help our standing in the world, and so it was not a great move on the part of President Trump. And now here a month later, he's asking for help from those same people. So now he wants Denmark, a NATO ally, to send troops to, help out with this problem that he's got in the Strait of Hormuz. I think, again, if they wanted to be nice, they should do that. They should help out. But they're not really disposed to playing nice with the United States right now, because the United States is not playing nice with them. So what goes around comes around, is what I'm saying. And that's unfortunate, because it shouldn't be that way. It didn't need to be that way. Right now, the Iranian foreign minister, his name is Aragchi. I don't know. I call it Aragchi. He actually said in a statement that that Iran is getting active help from Russia and China, as he called them strategic partners, and he said they are providing military cooperation. So now this has been something that was alleged last week by U.S. intel agencies, and now this week, Iran themselves is saying, yes, we're getting help from Russia and China. So this is a big problem. It really puts President Trump in a tough position, because he's been trying to be so nice to Russia, and he's been hammering on Ukraine. Ukraine's problem. They need to fix this war. It's Ukraine's fault. Yeah, like what? They just need to give up? Just give up their country? Is that what they need to do? However, now that we're in a war in Iran, the United States is begging Ukraine for help with their interceptor drones, and they're giving it, which is nice of them, and is kind of getting sideways with Russia, because now it's out there in the open. It's not something that was just alleged. It's now been confirmed by Iran that Russia and China are helping them. One of the ways that Russia may be helping Iran is by, actually, get this, hiding the new Ayatollah Khamenei. Muqtada Khamenei, have been told, is injured, maybe missing a leg, disfigured perhaps, and is not really in command at this point. That's word that's come from the intel agencies and the Trump administration. And now there's some rumors that are being reported that the new Ayatollah is actually in Russia receiving medical treatment. That would be a big problem. If Muqtada Khamenei is in Russia, then he's out of our reach. We're not going to send a team in there to assassinate him. We're not going to drop a bomb on him. Israel, we'll see. Alfred's mom is saying very confidently, Muqtada is in a coma. Well, that's amazing that you have better intel than the intel agencies, but maybe he is. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he's in Russia. That's the real interesting part of this, that Russia may be helping out. They apparently flew Muqtada Khamenei to Moscow for treatment in a Russian plane. So we've been wondering what all those Russian planes were doing coming and going from Iran. That may be one of the things that they did. Again, it's not confirmed, but it is being reported as likely. Okay. Now, Iran is leveraging, they have a 25-year economic agreement with China that focuses on oil sales to China. And so they're selling as much oil as they can to China right now and using that to bolster their economy. If we're serious about closing the Strait of, about opening the Strait of Hormuz to all traffic, then we should be serious about stopping the oil flowing to China and make this much more costly on China. We have an opportunity here to do that. And we have an opportunity to take China down a notch financially. That's not a bad thing. We have an opportunity to do that, even as we bolster Russia's ability to fund their war by getting higher prices for their oil. So it's a kind of a stuck between a rock and a hard place in a way. Now, Russia has called exercises of their version of NATO. It's called the CSTO, and it is made up of like Russia and Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and a bunch of countries like that. Armenia was part of CSTO, but they got out of that. So this is the Russian equivalent of NATO, and they're announcing exercises now. They launched them already. Strategic command staff exercises for the alliance centered around this Iran crisis. So Russia obviously sees this as either a threat or an opportunity or both. Now in Syria, the Syrian government is taking this as an opportunity. They are very happy to see Hezbollah getting their heads handed to them because the new Syrian government does not like Hezbollah. Syria has reinforced their borders with Lebanon and Iraq by putting thousands of troops down there. And that's interesting because some of that would be in Kurdish-controlled areas of what's left of Rojava. And the Syrian army is kind of exploiting the distractions that Israel has to move regular personnel and equipment into hilltop positions in the eastern Syrian Golan Heights. That gives them observation over northern Israel. They're also attempting to reestablish control over the Druze populated area in Suweda province. I've done podcasts about that when it was big in the news. The Druze down there getting into fights with the regime forces. Well, apparently that has not actually stopped. It's continuing to ramp up as the Israelis are distracted with what's going on in Lebanon. Okay, so there are reports that HTS or al-Jilani's forces in Syria have massed troops along the Lebanese border. Now, if they did that, that's not to fight against the Israelis. That's to keep Hezbollah from crossing into Syria and taking refuge there. So we may see more skirmishes between HTS and Hezbollah on the Syrian border, even as we're watching skirmishes between the Israelis and Hezbollah in the southern part of Lebanon. So the Litani River, this red area is the area that they're talking about taking over, and they're talking about keeping it. They're basically saying we're going to keep this area for good. So this is the largest, excuse me, the largest exercise, would be the largest invasion of Lebanon since like 2006. They had basically a month-long war there, and this may go on a lot longer than that as well. Okay, let's take that down. I want to play for you a statement put out by the foreign minister of Germany talking about how they are not going to get involved militarily in this fight.
Safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz diplomatically. However, there will be no military participation. We stand by our commitments and we are fulfilling our alliance tasks, particularly on NATO's eastern flank and in the high north.
What does the world expect? What does Donald Trump expect from, let's say, a handful or two handfuls of European frigates in the Strait of Hormuz that the powerful American Navy cannot accomplish there alone? That's the question I ask myself. And before we make a decision, outside of NATO territory, by the way, we would need both an international framework and a mandate from the German Bundestag. I would think about that very carefully before we take that step. And I see absolutely no reason to do so. It's not our war. We didn't start it. We want diplomatic solutions and a swift end.
So he's making some good points, and I think I could argue with some of those, but he at the end there, that was a little ironic. Because he's saying exactly what President Trump has been saying to Europe about the war in Ukraine. It's not our war. We didn't start it. Why should we help out? And the United States has completely cut our aid to Ukraine, which has put a heavier burden on the European countries. Not totally against that. But it's no wonder that things are strained a little bit with NATO right now. And so the French are saying essentially the same thing, and other NATO countries as well. So we have not got any takers yet on this. And here is Matt Whitaker, who's the UN ambassador for the United States, talking about why that's a bad thing.
Well, first of all, let's set the facts straight. The Iranian regime continues to threaten global trade and energy security by blocking the Straits of Hormuz and only letting certain traffic go through. There are a lot of folks that benefit. The United States of America is a net energy exporter. We have plenty to supply our own country. And so this is about other countries, including China, including our NATO allies, that receive oil and gas from the Gulf. And ultimately, that security of the Strait of Hormuz is in their interest. And so he is absolutely right to suggest that our allies need to help us and support our efforts in making sure that the Iranian regime no longer has ballistic missiles, Shahed drones, or developing a nuclear weapon. And all of these things add up to a fact that this should be the whole world, our allies, our friends, folks that benefit from the energy in the Gulf, coming together and, sending a clear message that the Iranian regime can no longer get away with this.
Okay, so again, he's making good points there, and you can tell from watching Carolyn Levitt and now Matt Whitaker that they have been told to really harp on this idea that we are making the world a safer place by taking down Iran. That part is true. Now, our allies he's talking about, or our NATO allies in Western Europe, they don't get their energy from the Strait of Hormuz. So they don't have a financial or economic interest necessarily in this. But I think we could make that case better because President Trump and his people need to be coming out and saying it's not about whether or not you get oil from the Strait of Hormuz. It's whether or not you're going to be able to survive $200 a barrel oil. We need help keeping the price of oil from spiking any further than it already has. Right now, it's hovering around 100, and you want to see the price of oil go down, and especially if you support Ukraine, because a higher price of oil supports Russia. So all these people saying we need to exit NATO, very short-sighted, just displays that you don't really understand what NATO is for. You don't understand what NATO does for us. I've done videos on that. You can go back and find, if you'd like, maybe I can get Nathan to go find them and plug them into the chat here or in the description. If you want to know why it's important the United States has allies like NATO, you should go watch that video. And I'm not going to go through all the arguments again right now, but we are going to get to our questions. Last but not least, Nathan, did I play President Trump on Air Force One yet? I don't recall if I did or not. Well, I'm going to try it again.
Some of the countries would be, help. Remember, it only takes a couple of people to screw up the strait, a couple of terrorists. You don't need their military is defeated, but all you need is a few people dropping mines here or there, and you loosen up. So we need a place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us.
Now I want you to listen to this with the last thing he says again. This is the most important part of what he says.
You could make the case that maybe we shouldn't even be there at all because we don't need it. We have a lot of oil. We are the #1 producer anywhere in the world times two.
So then he went on to say, this, I thought I had that in, sorry. Come on. There we go. I thought I had that in this video. I guess I didn't. He went on to say right after that, he said, I just want our allies to know that if they choose not to help us, we will remember. So it's a kind of a veiled threat there against our NATO allies. But really, I mean, we have pulled back from our role in NATO to the point where they're having meetings without us now. They're getting together to discuss Ukraine and things like that without even consulting with the United States. If you think we should get out of NATO, that's what you're advocating for. You're advocating for us leaving a gigantic power vacuum globally that will be filled by Russia and China and maybe some other countries that we don't want controlling things. Part of the reason that we need to stay engaged with NATO is because NATO purchases a whole lot of weaponry from the United States, and that creates that's responsible for at least 40,000 jobs in the United States. So it goes on and on and on. So NATO is the only time that Article 5 has been invoked in NATO, which means one attack on one is an attack on all, was 9/11. And NATO countries all sent troops to Afghanistan and Iraq, and many of them died and were wounded. And so NATO has come to our aid when we asked them to in the past. Now, we're not invoking Article 5 now because this was not an attack on the United States. This was an attack by the United States, and NATO Article 5 does not obligate our NATO allies to join us whenever we go to war against somebody for whatever reason, right? Okay. Next question. Let's go to questions now. You there, Nate? There we go. Has anyone heard who besides Israel and the Kurds have sent in or will be sending in support? Well, we're not positive that the Kurds have sent in support just yet. But they have the ability to, and the Iraqi Kurds as well. But I don't think there's a lot of material or especially military support that's making it into Iran right now. Okay, next. Does Israel use its laser against rockets and drones? They have tried using it, and the results have not been as good as they had hoped. What I'm being told. So there's that. Next. Concerning the boots on the ground, can you explain to everyone the lessons we should have already learned with Germany in World War II, Vietnam, being they had so much underground? Look, it's important for our leadership, especially our military leadership, not to get bogged down fighting the last war. This war is going to be far different than World War II or Vietnam. And look, there were lessons that we learned out of Vietnam, but those lessons are just a part of our corporate memory at this point with the U.S. military. And what we need to be learning are the lessons from Ukraine. So let's hope that they are looking real hard at doing that. So far, from what I've seen, our military has not applied ourselves sufficiently to learn the lessons we need to learn from Ukraine. And for example, over the weekend, an American base in Iraq was struck with a FPV drone for the first time. And that's the kind of thing Ukraine's been dealing with for a long, long time and could help us figure out how to avoid. So that's what we need to be learning from. All right. Next, just so I understand the great scheme of things, the ships in the Strait go in empty and come out full. Yes, that's the way it works. Next. I'm not a native English speaker, but is Trump set up NATO allies by asking them to help in Hormuz? So if they don't show up, he may get the reason to remove USA from NATO. No, I don't think look, it would be a really bad idea to remove the United States from NATO. President Trump is unlikely to do it. And that probably is not something that he could do unilaterally. We'd have to have approval of Congress or somebody to actually remove ourselves from NATO. Will the Marines take over Karg Islands? Don't know. They're about 2 weeks out. So if they do, it won't be for a couple of weeks. We'll have to wait and see. What of the Kurds? Haven't heard a lot out of the Kurds lately. They are kind of off the radar at the time being. Next. Could mining the waters around Karg Island be an option rather than using Marines to take it? If all we wanted to do was stop Iranians from using it, yes. I don't know that the United States is really into laying sea mines all that much. So interesting idea, Robert. Next. What measures can the world powers take to ensure the Strait's safety? Well, the German minister was correct in that, a couple handfuls of European ships is not going to conclusively open the Straits. But I would fire back at him and say, but every little bit helps. And it would make it faster for us to clear the Straits if we thought there were mines there. It would make it easier for us to escort ships through the Strait if we had some help, because we have a limited number of naval ships in there. And so, we're not going to use an aircraft carrier to escort a tanker through the Strait. So we're going to be using smaller ships to do that. And we only have so many of those. So, and they're pretty busy right now. So it would be helpful to have a couple handfuls of European ships in there to help. I just think President Trump has kind of burned that bridge and now he wants people to cross it. Next. How many Iranian leaders have they went through this week? I've seen pictures. I don't know if they're real, but pictures of warehouses full of IRGC cadavers covered with Iranian flags. Thousands of people have been killed in Iran so far. About 800 people have been killed in Lebanon so far. Next. Could the Marines be used to establish a beachhead in Iran for an Israeli-led ground force? No. Israel is not going to have a ground force in Iran of any size. That's not, look, you're talking about a country the size of Alaska. We don't have enough troops to take it over, and neither does Israel. If we put all our troops together, we might have enough, but that would mean taking all the troops out of Israel, all the troops out of every place else in the world, South Korea, Germany, you name it. The United States taking all of our troops and invading. That's how many troops it would take to invade Iran, like 600,000, they estimate. Next. If we have nukes and everyone else has nukes, why can't Iran? They're unstable. Yes, they are unstable. You just answered your own question. says the one who has the Samson option. Iran would use their nuclear bomb if they got one, not just as a deterrent. And that's why we can't afford to let them have it, because they keep threatening to use it. They said, we're going to get a bomb, and as soon as we do, it's going to blow up Tel Aviv. And we can't have that. I believe when your enemy tells you what he plans to do, you need to take him at his word. And so we have to stop him from having nukes. There are no other countries on planet Earth that are saying they're going to blow up the Western world. I mean, Russia threatens kind of obliquely to use nukes, like, hey, don't forget, we've got nukes. Hey, don't forget, there's nuclear bombs that could really cause a mess. But they don't outright say we are going to bomb, Copenhagen or someplace like that.
Doesn't North Korea always threaten to use nukes?
North Korea threatens all kinds of stuff, and nobody really takes them seriously. They have tons of missiles, and they are testing them all the time. The fact that there are 12,000 U.S. troops in South Korea keeps them from getting too skippy up there. But I mean, they're a nuclear power, and everybody knows or believes that they have nuclear weapons. And so there's not much we can do about them when they're lobbing missiles into international waters or right off of South Korea. It's just not much we can do about it. That's why we need to take out Iran before they get that same ability. Next. I know that Hezbollah is not a country, but since launching missiles at Israel is an act of war, wouldn't Israel have the right to chase them down anywhere they go? Yes, and they are going north of that river. That's just kind of the recognized stopping place where they have told Hezbollah they can't have anybody south of that river. But they've been striking north of that river a lot. So the Israelis aren't, seeing that as a hard boundary or anything. Next. Why do Israel need to fill up so many reserves? There's nothing threatening on land. Could they get troops to Iran via land? No, it's to get them to send troops into Lebanon, because taking over that much of Lebanon is going to take a lot of troops, and they still have to have troops in reserve. So they're calling more up. Do you think the United States should pull out of NATO? I've answered that question, Alex. No. Next. As far as the next major conflict to erupt, do you think NATO will get involved in fighting Russia, or do you think China and Taiwan will be next? Actually, I think Cuba might be next. Klamath River Media, if I had to guess. But as I always say, there are 1,000 things that could happen tomorrow that could change that calculus that we can't plan for. Next. UK is in trouble. Terrible pro-IRGC rally here yesterday. I'm sorry, PC. I'm really sorry. Look, the UK has fallen to the Islamists, and I feel very bad for the British people that still live there. Next, when do you think the war will come to an end? It'll be probably at least another 3 weeks, but a lot of that has to do with the oil price. The oil price keeps going up. President Trump gets more and more and more pressure to put a stop to the war. Do we even need NATO anymore? Well, I've discussed that already. We do need NATO, not only for the 40,000 jobs that they create in the United States, but for the fact that they allow us to use their bases in order to forward stage troops to get them to the Middle East and other places faster. We saved a lot of lives in the Iraq War because we had very high quality medical facilities at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. And when a guy got whacked in the war in Iraq, they would patch him up enough to keep him alive and then put him on the plane to Ramstein. And if they had to fly another 8 hours besides that to get back to the United States, that guy might not have survived. There are a lot of people like that. And it's cheaper for us to have troops in many cases in these bases because they subsidize our troops being there. So there's a lot of reasons for us to stay in NATO, and Russia is certainly one of them. Okay, next. Once again, NATO cries, save us. while condemning us. They need the Strait. We don't. They help to create the problem by buying Iranian oil. Well, NATO did not buy any Iranian oil. There's no NATO country that bought any Iranian oil. There's a whole lot of problems with it. So Nathan, leave that up on the screen. NATO is not crying out to for us to save them. We are crying out to NATO for them to save us. Just get that straight. And NATO is not condemning us. They're just saying, we don't feel like widening this war at all right now because we're trying to help Ukraine. We're trying to make up the difference that the United States left when they pulled out and stopped helping Ukraine. So right now we're going to focus on Ukraine. You guys focus on Iran. We'll focus on Russia. They don't need the Strait because, as I said, they get less than 6% of their total energy through the Strait. And they need the Strait about as much as the United States does because some of the fertilizer that we use does come through the Strait, at least the natural gas for it. So virtually everything in that statement is wrong. I still thank you for the $5. Next. This may seem like a simple question, but why no pipelines were built across Saudi Arabia as a backup in case of war with Iran? Well, there was a pipeline built across Saudi Arabia in case of a war with Iran, and it's being used to full effect right now. It can transport 7 million barrels a day. The Strait normally transports 15 to 20 million barrels a day, so that leaves a pretty large shortfall even with that pipeline running. Next. This may seem, no. In the past, you've snapped at those near you to bring you water as your voice fails. Why don't you tell your audience what you're dealing with your vocal cords? My voice is often strained, as you can imagine, because I spend an hour a day talking to myself in a dark room as a job. And I have damaged my vocal cords in the past, and so they're somewhat damaged. I don't know that I've snapped at people to bring me water, but it's amazing. My wife is always scratch her head like, I walked in and you said something to me, and everybody's like, "How dare you speak to her like that?" And it was like, "What are you talking about? We have a great marriage. We don't snap at each other. We don't fight." You know, it's just funny how people are, especially on YouTube. Next. Don't we have submarines that destroy mines? No. Well, I mean, no. Our mines, anti-mine capability is on literal ships. Literal meaning ships that stay close to the shore. That's not, anyway. So no, we don't have submarines that do that. Do you think the war will cost Republicans the midterms? Very well could. President Trump is definitely watching that. Do you think there will be a draft in America for the war in Iran? No. Definitely not. We know that Iran is a very strong country and will fight to defend their country to the bitter end. No, there won't be a draft in the United States. We don't need a draft. We're not going to put troops on the ground in Iran. And even if it means that we don't wipe out the IRGC, we're not putting troops on the ground. Could China dump our treasury bonds? Yes, they could. They have a lot of U.S. cash and T-bonds they could drop if they wanted to. I've heard that the U.S. is the last standing pillar in the West. If we fall, the rest of the world will follow. I don't know that that's a question. The rest of the world will follow. If the United States falls, it will be bad for the rest of the world. I don't think the rest of the world is going to, implode if the United States pulls away from NATO or whatever, but it's certainly not going to make things better. Okay, does that all? I see two more questions up there from Live Animal. Did we answer these? Iran is allowing ships to India and China. Israel is saying it'll only strike Iran for 3 weeks. NATO step back. Are we moving toward a deal? I don't think we're moving toward a deal. NATO is just not stepping forward. They were never forward to begin with, so they can't step back. And I'm not. Israel is saying it's going to take at least 3 more weeks, not only 3 more weeks. So there's an important distinction there. What will Iran ask for in a deal, a ceasefire, or something more? Iran is saying right now they're not interested in a ceasefire. Iran is putting out the word that we're not ready to stop fighting. So I guess they haven't been hurt bad enough yet. Okay. All right, folks, that's the way it goes. Thank you very much for watching. Now, let me talk about one more thing. And so many people get really, really worried, really wrapped around the axle about all this, the war and the stuff that's happening around the world. And I get it. I mean, you look at this, people are like, oh my gosh, are my kids going to get drafted, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, just how bad is it going to get in the economy? What if oil goes to $200 a barrel? There's a lot of things to worry about, I will admit, but we don't need to worry. Because number one, God's in control. Number two, I think whenever you get into a situation like this, I learned years ago when I was a stockbroker that anytime there's blood running in the streets is an opportunity. And you need to be looking for how to take advantage of that opportunity as best you can. So I have a special guest for us today. I did an interview with Daniel Boston, who is the CEO of our sponsor, Preserve Gold. And we just had an interesting economic discussion about where the markets are and about what the opportunities are for you right now. And so I'd like you to listen to this. I think you'll enjoy this talk. I've got Daniel Boston here from Preserve Gold. Daniel, it's great to see you again. For folks who might be watching us for the first time, didn't see the last interview we did with you, a lot of Americans are feeling like the ground just keeps moving under their feet. You got a war between Israel and Iran that could drag the entire Middle East into an even bigger conflict than it already is. Of course, Russia's war in Ukraine is grinding into another year. Energy markets are going crazy right now. Oil hovering around $100 a barrel, could double that at some point soon. So, of course, you got the national debt and everything else adding to that. So the volatility index, that what the traders call the fear and greed index, has been the lowest I've ever seen, which means it's in the extreme fear territory. Why is gold the place where people look when the market gets into this kind of, sort of craziness?
First of all, Chuck, thanks for having me again. Good to see you. Mm-hmm. It goes back to gold just being the classic safe haven that investors flock to during periods of uncertainty. And I think that's the name of the game right now. We're just, it's unrest and uncertainty. When money tends to rotate out of stocks and bonds during a market crash or during volatility, when money rotates out of cash during inflation, it just needs a place to go. It tends to gravitate towards gold and silver first because they're, again, the classic safe haven investments, and that's why prices go higher as everything else goes lower.
Well, I mean, we've lived through tough economic seasons before, whether it was inflation in the 70s or, I don't know, the financial crisis that we saw in 2008, or even the pandemic that shall not be named on YouTube. But right now feels like it's kind of a perfect storm, a weird combination of all that stuff happening at once. We got wars in, I saw the other day, 120 countries are engaged in armed conflict in one way or another around the globe. That's what, 70% of the countries on Earth? If that's not World War III, I don't know what is. Of course, then you've got the economic tensions and the massive government debt. Like I said, President Trump putting tariffs on everything that breathes and moves. From your perspective, what makes this moment different from other periods of uncertainty?
There's just so much going on. Like you said, it's almost hard to keep up. We're trying to stay above water here, trying to keep with all the news that's coming through the news cycle. What strikes me about this whole Iran-U.S.-Israel conflict is it almost feels like really a proxy war in some ways between the United States and China. I think the way that Iran is approaching this whole thing is they're going after energy infrastructure. I think, if you if you topple the global economy, that certainly creates a lot of chaos and disaster. I mean, that's why we're seeing Iran fire missiles into their neighbors and things like that. So, the whole thing is incredibly inflationary. Oil, like you said, alluded to earlier, oil's $100 a barrel. I think it's going to go a lot higher if this continues longer. That's going to affect Americans, obviously at the pump. People travel less, they spend less, economy slows down, it ripples into businesses, they stop hiring. There's a whole ripple effect that, that gets felt. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But, I don't think it's very good.
Well, I say the market climbs a wall of worry. And so we've seen that happening. And the gold prices have certainly been climbing that wall this year. Silver's up like 62% this year or something, but gold is up 20-something percent maybe, over $5,000 an ounce. There were a lot of experts who thought it might hit 5,000 by the end of this year, and it did so in January. So where do you see, well, first I want to ask, like, where do you see it going from here? But also, why does it tend to move higher during periods when confidence in the governments and the markets and the global stability and everything is tanking?
There's a lot of factors to consider here. I think the main thing is, the government and the big players, the hedge funds, institutions, they're a lot smarter than, the normal everyday folk, the retail investor. And so they kind of have an insight into what's going on. I just kind of look at what the central bank's been doing, not just the U.S. central bank, but central banks around the world. They're printing money out of thin air, taking printed dollars, using that money to buy gold to protect themselves against the very risks that either they're creating or that's being created right now by, the military infrastructure and whatever else. So, obviously, if you think about what happened in the 1980s when it was just the U.S. central bank that started buying gold, the price of gold went up 5 times from the time they started buying. Now, like I said, it's the central banks around the world. So, prices are moving up. Based on that, you factor in all the geopolitical unrest that's going on, market volatility, inflation, and everything else. I think that's just created the perfect storm, really, for gold and silver prices to behave the way they have been. In terms of, where prices are going to go, there's projections on silver at $200 an ounce over the next 12 to 24 months. There's projections on gold hitting $10,000 an ounce over the same time frame. It's your guess is as good as mine. I always tell people that my crystal ball was broken a long time ago. If I had that crystal ball, I'd be a multi-millionaire many times over. But, what we can do is use history as a guide. And if you just go throughout history, whether it's 2008 during the housing crisis, 2000 during the dot-com burst, you can go all the way throughout history, the Depression. Anytime you have uncertainty, a market crash, inflation, gold and silver prices have skyrocketed in response. So I think with everything going on right now between market volatility, inflation, wars, who knows what else, an election that's coming up in November, just a lot of uncertainty going on right now.
Does not seem like things are going to calm down a whole lot for the next few years. And especially for people who are in or near retirement, it's probably a really good idea, and just not to leave everything in that stock mutual fund that you had it in while you were working, which a lot of people do. Most people, don't do a lot with it once they retire or they're getting ready to. And so, as you said, all of this geopolitical uncertainty, I've been watching what China has been doing with this is a part of their asymmetric war, I believe, is they're limiting the export of precious metals from China, which essentially takes a whole lot of them off the market. And you're seeing the COMEX, just like gold is flying out of there so fast that I don't think they can keep it in stock. So when you talk to people around the United States, I don't hear a lot of people panicking, but they're certainly watching all this stuff. And they're seeing their inflation, as you were mentioning, eating away at their savings. In an inflationary environment, obviously gold is the place to be because it tracks the inflation rate. I've also talked a lot about this, that the government is actually under measuring intentionally the inflation rate. They're changing the metrics of how they measure inflation to make it not look so bad. But it's actually, if you went back and measured it the way they did in the 80s, the inflation rate would be much higher than what they show right now. So when it comes to their savings and retirement accounts and the way Americans are thinking about protecting their money, what are you seeing from everyday Americans, and what are you recommending to them?
Well, we talk to hundreds, if not thousands, of people every day that have concerns, and people are really concerned right now. I mean, I can just tell you from our perspective, in terms of the amount of business that we're doing, we're just trying to stay above water right now, like we talked about before we started this podcast. What we always tell people is, one, diversify and educate yourself. The most powerful thing you can do as an investor is to get informed. I think this whole thing, especially right now, just needs to boil down to each individual's personal convictions and beliefs about where they think we are right now. If you believe that the stock market's going to go from where it is right now, 47,000 and change on the Dow Jones, to 90,000, if you believe the dollar's becoming stronger, not weaker, then we'll be the first people to tell you this is just not the right investment for you. But if you believe what I personally believe, which I think the market is potentially teeter-tottering on the verge of disaster right now at the top, I think the dollar's in serious trouble going forward. If you believe those things, then the movement in metals makes a lot of sense, because they're simply designed to protect and preserve wealth and purchasing power.
So for somebody who's never owned gold or silver before, how should they think about it? Like, not as some get rich quick scheme. I never, would advocate something like that, but just as a part of a strategy of protecting what they've worked to build their whole lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, you want to take a look at your own situation. There's two different ways you can go about acquiring physical metals. If you have a retirement account, like an IRA, a 401k, 403b, any kind of qualified retirement account, we have what's called a precious metal self-directed IRA account that allows you to transfer funds from your existing retirement account into a precious metals IRA, completely tax-free, penalty-free. So if you have concerns with the amount of exposure you have to stocks or bonds or really any kind of paper asset, precious metals really sit on the other end of the seesaw from dollar-denominated assets. They tend to move up in values. Everything else is going the other way. So you might overexpose towards precious metals when things are more uncertain, and then you might reduce your exposure to metals if we're going through some sort of growth cycle and things are prosperous. And then the other side of the coin is our direct purchase program, which allows people to take money in the bank, whether it's a checking account, savings account, money market CD, anything along those lines. You can simply convert from paper dollars into hard physical currency. Those precious metals can either be shipped directly to a client's home, or we can store those metals for them at a approved depository on their behalf. But what I would just tell people right now is, one, get educated, like I said before. Take a look at your own situation. If you just feel uncomfortable and you want some more peace of mind, then that's kind of where we come in. Really, what I feel like I sell more than anything else is just peace of mind. I think that's what precious metals really provide here.
So, I have a lot of people who I recommend gold to that say, well, yeah, but I don't want to buy it right now because it's at all-time highs. I mean, this would be the worst time to buy it. And how do you overcome that objection?
Well, I always tell people, do what you feel comfortable doing. Some people see the opportunity right now. For me personally, I see prices being at 85 on silver and 5,200, whatever it is, on gold as an incredible opportunity. Because if you think about it, 2 years ago, gold was 2,000, silver was $20 an ounce. 2 years from now, if I had to guess, we're going to see gold around $10,000 an ounce, and we're going to see silver obviously a lot higher than it is right now, because the issues that are going on today, I think it's a prolonged problem. You don't just erase a $39 trillion debt load overnight. When you have catastrophe inside the financial markets, it's not an issue that resolves itself overnight. It's a gradual process. When you're dealing with the decline of the dollar, that's not an overnight process either. These are things that happens over years and even decades. And so precious metals respond to those types of events. So I would tell people, whenever you invest in precious metals, we're not day trading here. We're not buying today to sell tomorrow. We're holding long term. This is a wealth preservation strategy that we can utilize within a financial portfolio, so that as one side of the portfolio is going in the wrong direction, you have something that will offset and counterbalance the volatility, so you end up on the other side. Okay.
That's great. Good answer, because you hit the nail on the head. I mean, and going back to something you said earlier, if governments are they're printing fiat currency and then using that currency to buy gold, I might not be the smartest guy in the world, but that does not seem like a great idea for the everyday American. That doesn't seem like a good plan to make Americans wealthier or more prosperous, because it's diluting the value of the dollars that they earn. It's like a backdoor tax. It's like, on all dollars out there. So yeah. Now, if somebody was watching you right now and they don't want to ignore the risks that we're seeing in the world, but they also don't want to make a bad decision, what's the first step for them to take with preserved gold?
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point that you just said, I always tell people, you don't want to do what the big players are telling you to do. You want to do what they're doing themselves. So, if I'm sitting in a boardroom with JP Morgan, who's acquiring the largest stockpile of silver in U.S. history, I believe they're now over 650 million ounces of physical silver. You got central banks around the world, mass buying gold at record levels. That's what I'm going to go do. I think there's a big difference between someone's agenda telling me to do something versus someone who's putting their money where their mouth is, which I think is what's going on here. If people want to work with us or learn more, it's pretty simple. You can just give us a call at our toll-free number. That's 877-444-0923. You can text Chuck to 50505. You can also check out our website, www.preservedgold.com. We have a whole team of wealth preservation and precious metal specialists that are standing by to assist people that want to learn more. We don't push people to make decisions here one way or another. We really want to take the time with each person that we work with to understand what their goals are, their situation. We want to help people arrive in a place where they can make the most informed decision for themselves, whatever that is. So we have a wealth preservation guide that we're offering to our viewers free of charge. Just give us a call. We'll be happy to send that out. And look, there's plenty of times every single day where we talk to people and just say, look, the situation precious metals don't make sense for this person based on their own situation. And, we just want to really take the time with each person that we work with here to ascertain each individual's goals, objectives, so that we can land in a place at the end of the day where we can make the most informed decision whether or not this is the right direction for them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Daniel, for coming on and explaining all that. I always enjoy our conversations, and hopefully next time we do this, we can do it in person. My hope is to come out there and visit you before, I don't know, the end of spring or something. We'll see. With $200 a barrel oil, it might be a little expensive, but we'll work it out.
Long road trip instead of flight.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Well, God bless you. And thank you very much for coming on with us today. We'll have you on again at some point in the future.
God bless you, Chuck. Really, really happy to be, partnered with you. Just keep doing what you're doing and look forward to talking to you again soon.